13 Stoic Lessons by Marcus Aurelius that will change your life. Stay calm and mentally strong. Before empires fell, before modern psychology, before self-help became an industry, there lived a man who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders every single day. A ruler of vast lands, a commander of armies, a judge of justice, a leader responsible for millions of lives. Yet behind the throne, behind the power, behind the image of control, he was engaged in a quiet war. A war within his own mind. That man was Marcus Aurelius, not just an emperor, but a thinker who constantly questioned himself, corrected himself, and disciplined himself through philosophy. He did not write for fame. He did not write for an audience. He wrote to survive himself. His personal journal, later known as Meditations, was never meant to be published. It was a private collection of reminders, reflections, and mental corrections he used to stay grounded in a world filled with pressure, uncertainty, betrayal, and responsibility. And what he left behind was not just philosophy. It was a mental framework for staying calm in chaos. In today's world, stress has taken a new form. It is no longer war in the battlefield, but war in the mind. Overthinking, anxiety, comparison, pressure to succeed, fear of failure, constant distractions. People are overwhelmed not because life is harder, but because their minds are untrained. Stoicism offers a solution that is surprisingly simple, yet extremely difficult to practice. It teaches control. It teaches acceptance. It teaches clarity, not by changing the world, but by changing how you respond to it. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies one foundational truth. Not everything in life is within your control. This single realization separates calm minds from chaotic ones. Because most suffering does not come from events themselves, it comes from resistance to those events. When reality does not match expectation, frustration begins. When control is lost, anxiety grows. When outcomes are uncertain, fear takes over. Stoicism removes this internal conflict by teaching a powerful distinction. What you control, and what you do not. Imagine carrying two types of burdens in life. The first are responsibilities that belong to you, your decisions, your effort, your discipline, your reactions. The second are burdens that do not belong to you, other people's opinions, unpredictable outcomes, external events, and circumstances beyond your influence. Most people unknowingly carry both. They worry about things they cannot change. They try to influence things they cannot control. They attach their emotions to outcomes they cannot guarantee. And as a result, they suffer twice. First in anticipation, and then in reality. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself of this distinction, not as theory, but as practice. He trained his mind to ask a simple question whenever faced with difficulty. Is this within my control? If the answer was yes, he acted. If the answer was no, he let go. This separation creates clarity. Because energy is no longer wasted on resistance. Think of a storm. You cannot stop the rain. You cannot control the wind. You cannot command the sky. But you can take shelter. You can prepare. You can respond intelligently. Stoicism is not about ignoring reality. It is about responding to reality effectively. In daily life, this principle shows up in subtle ways. When someone criticizes you, you cannot control their opinion. When a plan fails, you cannot control every outcome. When delays happen, you cannot control time itself. But what you can control is your reaction. Will you panic? Will you complain? Will you lose focus? Or will you adjust, learn, and continue? The Stoic does not waste energy fighting reality. Instead, The Stoic aligns with it once the mind understands what it can and cannot control. The next step is even more powerful. Because control alone is not enough. Perception determines how control is used. And this leads us to the second lesson. Two people can experience the exact same situation and walk away with completely different emotional outcomes. One feels defeated, the other feels challenged. One sees failure, the other sees feedback. One gives up, the other adapts. The event did not change. Only the interpretation changed. Reality itself is neutral. What gives it meaning is the mind observing it. This means that suffering is often not caused by external events, but by internal judgment. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He trained himself to observe his thoughts instead of being controlled by them. Because the first reaction of the mind is not always the truth. It is simply a reaction. And reactions can be examined, questioned, and reshaped. When something goes wrong, most people immediately label it as, "This is bad. This shouldn't have happened. This is unfair." But Stoic thinking introduces a pause. Instead of reacting immediately, the mind observes, what actually happened? Is this truly harmful? What can be learned from this? This shift creates distance between the event and the emotion, and in that distance lies control. Perception acts like a filter. If the filter is distorted, reality appears distorted. If the filter is clear, reality appears clearer. You cannot always change what happens in life, but you can always change how you see it. And when perception changes, emotion follows. So far, two foundational truths have been established. Not everything is within your control. Your perception determines how you experience reality. These two principles form the mental foundation of Stoicism. Without them, the remaining lessons cannot be fully applied. With them, everything else becomes easier to understand. In the life of Marcus Aurelius, obstacles were not rare. They were constant. Political pressure, military threats, plagues, betrayals from those closest to power, and the silent weight of responsibility that never paused. Not even for a moment. Most people, when faced with obstacles, see them as interruptions. Something that blocks progress, something that delays success, something that should not be there. But Marcus Aurelius saw obstacles differently. He did not treat them as interruptions. He treated them as instructions. There is a common illusion that life should move in a straight line, that progress should be smooth, that success should be predictable, that effort should be rewarded without resistance. But reality does not work that way. Obstacles are not exceptions to the journey. They are embedded within it. Every obstacle contains hidden value. A delay teaches patience. A failure teaches humility. A rejection teaches resilience. A loss teaches detachment. What appears as a problem from one angle becomes a lesson from another. Stoicism trains the mind to reframe obstacles not as enemies, but as trainers. When faced with difficulty, the Stoic does not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, the Stoic asks, "What is this preparing me for?" This subtle shift transforms frustration into curiosity, resistance into acceptance, confusion into clarity, fear into growth. Imagine life as a training ground. Every challenge is a form of resistance designed to strengthen you. Without resistance, muscles weaken. Without pressure, diamonds never form. Without obstacles, character remains untested. So when difficulty appears, it is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to engage. If obstacles are part of the path, then how you respond to them becomes critical. And that response is shaped not only by mindset, but by discipline. Which brings us to the next lesson. Most people misunderstand discipline. They associate it with restriction, with limitation, with a lack of freedom. But in Stoic philosophy, discipline is the foundation of true freedom. Because without discipline, you are controlled by impulses. The human mind is naturally reactive. It seeks comfort. It avoids pain. It gravitates toward ease. Without discipline, decisions are made based on emotion in the moment, not based on principles, not based on long-term vision, but based on temporary feelings. An undisciplined mind procrastinates. It avoids difficult tasks. It seeks immediate gratification. It abandons goals when discomfort appears. Over time, this creates a life that feels out of control. Not because of external forces, but because internal impulses are in charge. Marcus Aurelius did not wait to feel motivated. He acted regardless of how he felt. He understood that discipline is not built in moments of comfort, but in moments of resistance. When you do what is right, even when you don't feel like it, you strengthen control over your own behavior. Freedom is often misunderstood as doing whatever you want. But Stoics define freedom differently. Freedom is the ability to choose your response intentionally, not reactively, not impulsively, but deliberately. A disciplined mind is not easily swayed by emotion. It remains anchored in principles. And that stability creates real freedom. If discipline keeps your actions aligned, then awareness keeps your mind grounded. Because many struggles come not from action, but from being lost in time, dwelling in the past or worrying about the future. Which leads us to the next lesson. The mind has a tendency to wander. It revisits the past. It imagines the future. It constructs scenarios that may never happen. And in doing so, it often disconnects from the present moment. When the mind is trapped in the past, it carries regret. When it is lost in the future, it carries anxiety. But the present moment contains neither regret nor fear. It is the only space where action is possible. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to return to the present. Not as a suggestion, but as a discipline. Because the present moment is where life actually occurs. Not in memory, not in imagination, but in the now. Consider a simple task. Eating, walking, speaking, working. When fully present, each action becomes clear and deliberate. But when the mind drifts, attention weakens. Errors increase. Stress builds. Presence restores clarity. The present moment is not just a concept. It is a practice, a mental anchor that brings stability to a wandering mind. When you focus on now, you reduce unnecessary mental noise. You become more efficient, more aware, more in control. As the teachings of Marcus Aurelius continue to unfold, one truth becomes increasingly clear. Stoicism is not about controlling the world. It is about mastering your response to it. By now, the mind has learned to distinguish what is within control. To reframe perception, to see obstacles as opportunities, to practice discipline, and to remain present. But there is still a deeper layer. A layer where resistance to reality is replaced with acceptance. Where character becomes more important than outcome. And where action is guided not by convenience, but by principle. One of the greatest sources of human suffering is resistance. Not physical resistance, but mental resistance to reality. When events do not align with expectations, the mind often reacts with frustration. It shouldn't be this way. This is unfair. This must change immediately. But reality does not bend to emotional demand. Resistance creates friction. Friction creates tension. And tension leads to suffering. The more you fight reality internally, the more energy you lose externally. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean surrendering your standards. It means acknowledging what is happening without distortion. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to accept events as they unfolded, not because he liked every outcome, but because resisting reality wasted energy that could be used for response. Acceptance allows the mind to move from reaction to action, from emotional chaos to rational clarity. Imagine standing in the rain. You can complain about the weather. You can wish it would stop. You can resist it mentally. But the rain continues regardless. Acceptance says, this is the situation. Now, what is the best response? This shift reduces internal conflict. And with less conflict, comes more clarity. Once acceptance is established, the focus naturally shifts inward. Because if external events are beyond full control, then what truly defines a person? The answer lies in character. In a world driven by appearances, achievements, and status, it is easy to believe that identity is defined externally. By titles, by possessions, by recognition. But Stoicism challenges this illusion. It redirects attention away from what you have, toward who you are. External success is temporary. It can be gained, and lost. It can rise, and fall. It depends on circumstances beyond control. Character, however, is internal. It is built through choices, shaped by discipline, reinforced by consistency. Marcus Aurelius' internal focus. Despite being an emperor, Marcus Aurelius did not define himself by power. He constantly reminded himself to remain humble, ethical, and rational. His writings reflect self-correction rather than self-praise. A continuous effort to align actions with virtue. Character is revealed in moments of pressure. When things go wrong, when no one is watching, when decisions must be made without external validation, in those moments, who you are becomes visible. Stoicism teaches that the highest value is not fame or success, but integrity. At the end of each day, a Stoic may ask, did my actions reflect my values? Not, what did others think of me? This inward evaluation builds stability. Because character does not fluctuate based on external opinions. If character defines identity, then action defines expression. And the quality of action matters more than convenience. Which leads to the final lesson in this section. Every day presents a choice. A choice between what is easy, and what is right, what is comfortable, and what is necessary. What is immediate, and what is meaningful. Most people gravitate toward ease, because ease requires less effort, less resistance, less discomfort, less uncertainty. But ease often leads to long-term instability. Avoiding difficult tasks may bring short-term relief, but it creates long-term consequences. Procrastination accumulates. Responsibilities grow. Opportunities are missed. Over time, the gap between potential and reality widens. Stoic principle of right action. Stoicism emphasizes acting in accordance with reason and virtue. Not based on impulse, not based on avoidance, but based on what is correct, even when it is uncomfortable. Marcus Aurelius' approach to action. Marcus Aurelius did not separate his role as emperor from his personal philosophy. His decisions were guided by duty, responsibility, and rational judgment. He aimed to act in alignment with what was just and necessary, not what was easiest or most convenient. Doing what is right often requires effort. It may require saying no, it may require discipline. It may require facing discomfort. But each time you choose the harder right over the easier wrong, you strengthen your inner foundation. As the Stoic journey deepens, the teachings of Marcus Aurelius begin to challenge something fundamental within human nature. the desire to be seen, the need to be approved, the fear of being judged. Alongside this, a quiet reminder emerges. Time is slipping away, and life, as unpredictable as it is, will always contain uncertainty. In this part, Stoicism shifts from internal awareness to external detachment, time consciousness, and mental preparation for adversity. Human beings are naturally social. We seek approval, we seek recognition, we seek reassurance from others that we are enough. At first glance, this seems harmless. But when the need for validation becomes a dependency, it begins to control behavior. When your sense of worth depends on others, your peace becomes unstable. Because opinions change, what is praised today may be criticized tomorrow. What is admired by one person may be rejected by another. If your identity is built on external opinions, then your identity is constantly shifting. Stoicism teaches that your value is not determined by external feedback. It is determined by your character, your actions, and your integrity. Marcus Aurelius consistently reminded himself that the opinions of others are outside his control. Therefore, they should not dictate his inner state. Imagine building a house on moving ground. No matter how strong the structure is, if the foundation is unstable, the entire structure is vulnerable. External validation is unstable ground. Internal character is solid ground. Instead of asking, "What will people think?" the Stoic asks, "Is this the right thing to do?" This shift removes the pressure of pleasing everyone, and replaces it with clarity of purpose, when the mind is no longer dependent on external validation. Attention can shift to something far more limited, yet far more valuable. Time. Unlike money, time cannot be earned back. Unlike possessions, time cannot be replaced. The difference is not the event. The difference is readiness. Before starting a difficult task, a Stoic might acknowledge, "This may not go perfectly. This may be uncomfortable. This may require effort." By accepting this beforehand, the mind is less resistant during the process. These three lessons work together. Detachment from external validation stabilizes identity. Awareness of time creates urgency and purpose. Mental preparation reduces fear and surprise. Together, they build a mindset that is grounded, focused, and resilient. As the Stoic journey reaches its deeper layers, the teachings of Marcus Aurelius begin to shift from survival to meaning. From control to appreciation. From discipline to character. From preparation to purpose. When gratitude stabilizes the mind, the next step is how you interact with others. Because Stoicism is not only internal, it extends outward. A central idea in Stoic philosophy is this: humans are interconnected. We are not isolated beings. We exist within a shared system of cooperation, interaction, and responsibility. Every person you encounter is navigating their own struggles, their own fears, their own uncertainties, their own limitations. Understanding this creates empathy, not judgment. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to respond to others with patience. Even when faced with difficult behavior, instead of reacting with anger, he viewed others through a lens of understanding. People act based on their knowledge and awareness. When awareness is limited, behavior may be flawed. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the ability to remain composed in the face of irritation. To respond thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally. Stoicism places virtue above everything else. Virtue includes wisdom, justice, courage, self-discipline. These qualities define a meaningful life. Not wealth, not fame, not status, but how you think, act, and treat others. A purposeful life is not defined by external achievements alone. It is defined by alignment. Alignment between thoughts, actions, values, and behavior. When these are aligned, life feels coherent, stable, meaningful. Across all 13 lessons, a complete philosophy emerges. Control what you can, accept what you cannot, reframe your perception, see obstacles as growth, build discipline, stay present, accept reality, value character. Act with integrity, detach from validation, respect time, prepare mentally, practice gratitude, live with kindness and virtue. Together, these principles form a mental system designed not just to reduce stress, but to build resilience, clarity, and purpose. Life will not always be predictable. Challenges will appear, circumstances will change, uncertainty will remain. But your response does not have to be unstable. You can remain calm in chaos, focused in distraction, and grounded in uncertainty. This is the Stoic way, not the elimination of difficulty, but the mastery of self. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world filled with pressure, responsibility, and adversity. Yet he found a way to remain centered, not because he controlled everything, through his writings, he left behind a reminder. You cannot always control what happens, but you can always control how you respond. And that is where true strength begins.